There's rarely been a Hollywood comeback as triumphant as that of Robert Downey Jr., who went from being a tabloid punchline of the late 90s to a 10-year stint as Iron Man in the MCU, then finally winning an Oscar for his extraordinary performance in Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, and now turning to prestige TV to play the multiple American roles in Oldboy director Park Chan-wook's HBO adaptation of the Pulitzer-winning Vietnam War novel, The Sympathizer. But in between his final stint in the Iron Suit and his return to award-worthy period dramas, RDJ was in another career rough spot when he talked to the animals as the titular doctor in the family fantasy failure known simply as Dolittle. As Downey's tenure in the Avengers drew to a close in 2018, he began filming and co-producing alongside his wife Susan on another adaptation of Hugh Lofting's beloved children's book series of the British veterinarian who's learned to talk with his animal clients. Previously made by Fox as an epic musical with Rex Harrison in 1967 that infamously bribed its way to a Best Picture nomination despite its critical and financial failure. And a modern-day comedy with Eddie Murphy in 1998, followed by its 2001 sequel, which inexplicably got several direct-to-video follow-ups, with both Kyla Pratt and the voice of Norm MacDonald returning for every single one.
Ridiculous. Completely ridiculous.
But Downey's Dolittle would be different under the direction of Oscar-winning traffic writer and Syriana director Stephen Gaghan, alongside a series of big-name actors voicing his animal pals, most of whom have won either Academy Awards or WrestleMania. Then after a round of reshoots in 2019 to make the movie funnier, set to be directed by Renfield's Chris McKay, then handed off to Ninja Turtles 2014's Jonathan Liebesman, Dolittle dropped in January 2020 to avoid competition with Rise of Skywalker, only to be put down by horrible reviews and muzzled by a weak box office haul, and later referred to by Robert Downey Jr. as a 2.5-year wound of squandered opportunity that led him to rethink his post-MCU career for the better. But since this flick was sadly not the worst event in 2020 that led to empty movie theaters, let us revisit this career downswing for the former Iron Man that made us hate him 3000. After all, you JoBlo subscribers may remember that Dolittle came out not just right before COVID, but also right after Universal's other infamously bad movie about CGI-rendered talking animals. Or should I say, singing animals? How fitting for the same studio that would give us Oppenheimer to have given us a double feature that felt like the cinema equivalent of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Say hello to my little friend!
And now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Before we continue with our video, here's a reminder to click the Store tab on any of our JoBlo channels and browse our collection of the latest and freshest designs in our merch store. Go get you some.
Why talk with the animals when you can instead drink with the animals to play another round of the awfully good drinking game? Take a double shot as we open with this admittedly well done animated sequence, where the voice of Emma Thompson tells us the origin story of one Dr. John Dolittle, an animal doctor who wows the people of Victorian London by talking the languages of all his animal clients, with Queen Victoria even rewarding Dolittle with his very own sanctuary for animals he's freed from captivity, alongside his adventurous wife, Lily. Surely she'll be just fine if Dolittle lets her head out on an adventure by herself for once.
Lily died at sea.
Nope, which leads the grieving Dr. Dolittle to close up his practice and retreat from human society, as well as sell his animal pals off to the local butcher. Look, I'm sorry, but that's what he would have done in real life. The Victorian era was a rough fucking time. But years later, we find ourselves meeting the young, animal-loving lad who will soon come to be Dolittle's apprentice, Tommy Stubbins, played by House of the Dragon's Harry Collette, being taught by his uncle, played by Game of Thrones' Ralph Ineson, how to hunt for ducks long before the invention of the Nintendo Zapper. But instead hitting a poor little squirrel with his bullets.
We have to help him.
And being led by a talking parrot with the dying squirrel over to the seemingly abandoned residence of Dr. John Dolittle, who set up a trap outside for Stubbins to fall into while he's inside his house looking like RDJ went back on all the drugs he kicked back in the 90s. playing a game of chess using mice as living chess pieces against a rather nervous gorilla who I guess the doctor is treating for bowel issues. I'm sorry, is this gorilla really gonna dump ass all over these poor little mice?
He's gonna blow!
If only there was a way for us in the audience to hear a translation of what these animals are saying. But unlike the 67 musical that had Dolittle speaking English on the animals' behalf, and more like the 98 remake that had the animals voiced by a bunch of wisecracking comedians, Chris Rock, Albert Brooks, and the aforementioned Norm MacDonald,
Ridiculous.
we make one of many transitions to translate into English what Dolittle is talking about with these animals, all of whom are voiced by an inexplicably huge cast of voice talent. First, there's Rami Malek as Chi-Chi, the friendly gorilla whom this doctor is treating for anxiety.
I am not a prisoner of fear.
You are not a prisoner of fear.
Which is exactly what you're gonna get after seeing this monkey's face while screaming like a human being. Then there's John Cena as Yoshi, the polar bear who has a problem with feeling cold all the time.
Go to save the queen, bro. I am not your bro.
Kumail Nanjiani as the bear's ostrich pal, Plimpton, who suffers from levels of neurosis that would have made the late Richard Lewis proud.
You should be an Eskimo's rug by now. Ow, claws. Ow, beak.
Octavia Spencer as Dab Dab, a sassy one-legged duck who's got an unfunny running joke about mistaking medical equipment with pieces of celery.
Forceps. No, still celery.
Don't forget duck's forceps. That's a leak, Dab Dab.
Tom Holland reuniting with his old MCU pal RDJ to be at Mr. Stark's side once more, voicing the Doctor's loyal dog, Chip.
It's an ingenious design. I think you just caught yourself a boy.
And Craig Robinson as the aforementioned Red Squirrel Kevin, whom Dolittle has hesitantly agreed to operate on for Stubbins.
If I die, I swear I won't hunt your house.
With his own unfunny running joke throughout the movie where he vows
revenge
against the kid who accidentally shot him.
He's coming to finish the job! He won't rest till I'm dead!
Oh, and of course Emma Thompson as the one animal here who can just straight up speak English, Polly the parrot.
It's just a boy. This is an opportunity.
This is a nightmare!
Okay, what in the actual hell was that? Did Robert Downey Jr. just do an impression of Mr. Costington from The Simpsons? You may have noticed that Downey is playing this normally British character as a Welshman instead, as he based his Dolittle around a Welsh neo-pagan physician and political activist from the Victorian era named William Price.
Kind of neo-druidic doctor in the 19th century.
This was a real guy.
You betcha. I based my character on him.
It's certainly an interesting choice for an actor who's previously shown to be excellent at doing accents.
You don't know what to be.
But it's also a bad choice when you actually hear his Welsh accent.
My house is descending into chaos.
That sounds more like a Glasgow accent stuck somewhere between the cast of Trainspotting and Mrs. Doubtfire.
Righto, let's save this squirrel, shall we?
Which has clearly been redubbed in post-production by Downey to the point of him often hiding his lips away from the camera.
I told you, I'm closed for business. He should fetch my bags and keep his gob shut.
Hell, you could have dubbed him over with the voice of Matt Berry, and it would have been just as distracting. I say, will one of you talking quadrupeds fetch the good doctor a bottle of gin? Anyway, Dolittle is far less eager to help the other kid who's come to his doorstep, Lady Rose, a maid of honor for Queen Victoria who needs the doctor to help the queen again after she's suddenly fallen ill from a poisoned cup of tea, and whose death would lead to Dolittle losing the deed she gave him for his animal preserve.
The deed was for life.
The Queen's life, John.
I knew I shouldn't have let monkeys proofread the contract.
You stupid monkey!
So the doctor gets groomed up by his animal patients to once again look disconcertingly just like Taika Waititi, and arrives at Buckingham Palace to face off against the two secret villains looking after the dying queen. Dr. Blair Moodfly,
No, it's Moodfly.
the former schoolmate of Dolittle's who still holds a grudge, played by Michael Sheen, and Lord Thomas Badgley, a chairman of the Queen played by Jim Broadbent.
But he was like this at school. I'm saying something interesting.
I am interested.
Two more great actors who also have to play second fiddle to a bunch of CGI animals, making references to pop culture and modern-day slang that sure as hell did not exist in mid-1800s London.
Cheer up, Angry Bird!
Kevin's log, day 7.
Do you understand the words coming out of my bill? That are coming out of my mouth?
Yes, I'm sure the African-American prisoners who helped coin the phrase snitches get stitches had to have gotten it off a pet squid who lived in the tank of Queen Victoria of England during the Victorian era. So Dolittle deduces that the only cure for the Queen's fatal poison can be found from the fruit of the Eden tree, aka the very same tree that Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit from.
Oh, its fruit is said to cure every malady known to man.
We have no choice but to embark on this perilous journey.
So he and his animals prepare to journey to Eden Tree Island, while Gyp's left behind with Lady Rose to look after the Queen, and Stubbins is shooed off by Dolittle to go back home to his unloving uncle, until Polly flies to the boys' home to bring him along to the boat, with help from Betsy the giraffe and Tutu the red fox, voiced respectively by Selena Gomez and Marion Cotillard.
We're wanted in 3 forests, and it's not an escape mission unless you're being chased.
In the easiest paycheck either of these two ladies has ever cashed.
There's something special about you, Stubbins, I've only seen in 2 other humans.
But why bother to explain what this something special about Stubbins is, let alone how these animals can even talk to each other in the first place? We've got to get to a loud, chaotic chase scene over to Dolittle's boat that contains some of the film's very worst CGI.
Fly and be free!
Oh, how nice of Steven Spielberg to lend the filmmakers some of the unused effects from The Adventures of Tintin. Not the movie, but the Nintendo Wii tie-in video game. One big problem with Downey's Dolittle is that he's so grumpy and downbeat over his dead wife, whom he constantly keeps flashing back to, that it's hard to see any of the passion for his work or love for his animals that this guy originally had. And him having a dubbed accent that sounds like the spokesperson for the Scott's lawn care commercials certainly doesn't help.
Because the parrot's in charge of my ship! Brilliant! Feed it, Lord. Feed it.
It's hard to see why Michael Sheen is so jealous of this guy in the first place, aside from him playing the same kind of jealous villain that RDJ had to face off against in Sam Rockwell's Justin Hammer or Jared Harris's Professor Moriarty, as Lord Badgley sends Moodfly out on a boat to stop Dolittle from reaching the island.
He said something about my chin.
With Dolittle's crew fending off Moodfly's explosive cannons by calling underwater for help from a nearby whale, who's surprisingly not voiced by John Rhys Davies.
Humphrey here. Where we headed?
While Dolittle signals the whale underwater wearing an old-timey diving suit that might as well be a steampunk version of Tony Stark's metal armor, complete with a similar shot of his head inside the suit's helmet.
I let you down, Doc. I froze.
No, Cheech. It's okay to be scared.
You're totally right, Doctor. It is okayed to be skied. Then Emma Thompson pops back up to narrate, explaining why Dolittle and Stubbins are now dressed up as a chicken man and bearded Mother Teresa, to stop over at the island of Monteverde, where Dolittle's wife was born, and retrieve her journal that has a map to Eden Tree Island, with help from a wisecracking dragonfly voiced by Jason Mantzoukas, whose role here sadly disqualifies this film from getting a How Did This Get Made episode.
Don Carpenterino. I'm here on behalf of these humans.
You come to me for this on the day of my daughter's wedding.
You come into my house on the day my daughter's to be married.
I'm sure Francis Ford Coppola must feel so proud that his 1972 cinematic masterpiece is still getting referenced in movies for kids who don't know what the hell The Godfather even is. All while he can't find a single studio in America to distribute his first movie in over a decade. Somebody make that make sense. Unfortunately, Lily's journal is in the sexy Spanish hands of her father, who happens to be the pirate king of Monteverde, King Razuli, played by the one and only Antonio Banderas.
I never understood what Lily saw in you.
Banderas steals the movie in his few scenes here, still exuding his Zorro-era sexiness in his 60s, even while acting convincingly intimidating towards Dolittle.
All you had to do was never show your face again, and even at that, you failed.
He would have certainly made a far superior villain over Michael Sheen doing his best Snidely Whiplash impression, even if the king has an annoying one-eyed rabbit sidekick voiced by an uncredited Will Arnett, who makes one of this movie's worst jokes.
Dr. Dolittle did a little doo-doo. Did Dr. Dolittle do a little doo-doo?
This isn't Doolittle, it's Do-Doolittle. It's Hey, did you write this movie?
On top of a vicious pet tiger who just so happens to be a former patient of Dr. Dolittle's, Barry the Butcher Bernstein, voiced by the great Ralph Fiennes.
We were just starting to make progress.
Perhaps we should just pick up where we left off.
I suspect that Dolittle will not be considered among Schindler's List or Grand Budapest Hotel as one of the best films in Fiennes' filmography, as his tiger basically does the same Jewish neurotic comedy routine that Albert Brooks's tiger already did in the '98 Dolittle.
Why can't you be more like your brother? He eats poachers for a living, you know.
Until he grows savage once more, and Chi-Chi must save the dog's life by going Rochambeau all over the tiger's tender testicles.
Hit him in the low area.
Oh! Ow, my berries!
Yes, folks, that was Ralph Fiennes screaming that he's been kicked in the nuts. I am starting to doubt that most of this film came to us from the same writer and or director as Traffic and Syriana. But as it turns out, there is nothing that Dr. Dolittle can possess that Dr. Moodfly cannot take away, including Lily's journal and Dolittle's now exploded sea vessel that was named after his dead wife.
I won. We're finished.
Yet just when it seems the chips are down for our heroes, along comes a helpful hand to save the day for Dolittle.
Who'd like to dance?
No, not this orangutan who's dressed to audition for the village people. I meant King Razuli, who's had a change of heart about helping Dolittle and his animals after the doctor agrees to let the king pet his head for comfort whenever he gets another panic attack.
I miss her too. She wanted you to keep going.
So now it's off once again for Dolittle on this pirate ship that has Rickety Cricket from Always Sunny stuck inside a pillory, where they recreate the map from memory and soon find themselves finally arriving on Eden Tree Island, little knowing that Moodfly and his men have already beaten them there.
I beat you.
But nowhere do these tonally inconsistent reshoots feel more apparent than when both of these doctors find themselves up against a dragon who is guarding the Eden Tree and proceeds to roast some of these men in off-screen PG fashion. Well, surprisingly enough, there is actually a dragon in the second Dolittle book that this movie is primarily based on. By which I mean a pirate who happens to be nicknamed the Barbary Dragon. That is the best justification they've got for putting a dragon in a story that's supposed to be about real animals. Who is voiced by one of the many Harry Potter alumni in this cast, Francis de la Tour, and ends up bonding with Dolittle over their shared grief from having lost their respective loved ones.
It's hard to carry on when you've lost the one you love.
You know nothing of my pain.
But any good message that this movie might teach your kids is quickly undone when Dolittle realizes the actual problem with this dragon. A plot element which was suggested by Robert Downey Jr. himself during the reshoots, and described by one critic as a set piece that will forever be seared into the minds of those unfortunate enough to sit through it. Brace yourselves, people. It turns out that the dragon has got herself an impacted colon.
Severe impaction of the colon.
I'm sorry, colon, from years of emotional stress and a blockage right up her rectum.
Just get on with it.
Leaving Dolittle to proceed fisting the anus.
Fisting the anus all the way.
To fish out everything from knight's armor to fucking bagpipes.
Oh, no, you didn't.
Oh my God!
Oh my God!
All for the punchline of the dragon letting off a huge fart in Dr. Dolittle's face.
You went full retard, man. Nothing to be ashamed of.
In fact, I'm pretty sure that's similar to another gas-related joke with a rat that was made back in the '98 Dolittle, which you saw in all the trailers for that movie.
It's a false alarm, it's just gas.
Hugh Lofting's grave must be self-immolated in flames by now, from seeing what Hollywood keeps doing to his work.
He just had gas.
The dragon allows Dolittle into the Avatar theme park next door, where they pick themselves a glowing fruit off the tree. And just as the oncoming solar eclipse is about to finally mark the death of the Queen of England, wow, it's like this movie predicted the future. Twice! That's when Dolittle and the animals barge in to overtake the guards and give the dying queen a drop off the Eden fruit.
The killing has ended. Let there be life.
A humble thanks be to God.
Damn! Damn!
Not so fast, Jim Broadbent. Turns out that Dolittle left behind his trusty stickbug pal behind over at Buckingham to drop in on Badgley confessing to poisoning the Queen.
Poison the Queen. What? He did?
Leaving the cornered Badgley no other choice but to surrender to his new animal overlords.
Take one more step and I'll rip you a brand new end.
Thank God that this movie doesn't have a butthole cut like Cats did, where Kevin the Squirrel would not only say asshole, but stick out his actual asshole.
Shut the fuck up!
Now that the Queen is saved and Dolittle has finally learned to live without Lily, Emma Thompson's narration wraps things up to say that Dolittle has now gone back into business,
As Lily would have wanted.
and young Stubbins has been brought in officially as his helpful apprentice, with his uncle watching approvingly of his nephew's animal skills in one of the movie's few subplots that it bothered to wrap up at the end. Then after her credits roll over Sia's original song for the movie titled, Original, we then find out the fate of Dr. Moodfly, after he had anticlimactically fell to his doom back in that dragon scene, trying to talk to a horde of bats down below in a cave, which would have been a perfect opportunity for Matt Berry and the rest of the What We Do in the Shadows cast to make a voice cameo. Well, since I've already made a million Iron Man jokes in this review already, what's one more for the road?
Tony Stark killed this man in a cave with a bunch of bats.
Before we continue with our video, here's a reminder to click the Store tab on any of our JoBlo channels and browse our collection of the latest and freshest designs in our merch store. Go get you some.
This movie had the smell of disaster right from the start, from the first trailer set to a slowed down cover of What a Wonderful World that completely leaves out any of the modern day wisecracks but contains several lines of dialogue not heard in the final movie.
Hello, Patty. Hello, lunch.
Nobody told me there'd be a dragon.
To this cringy featurette of the Dolittle animals auditioning alongside Robert Downey Jr., reading scenes from classic Universal Pictures movies.
We're gonna need a bigger shark.
Say hello to my little friend.
Hello.
Most of the scientists in this country would prefer to see Mr. Strauss completely out of government.
Okay.
And Downey was particularly enthusiastic for this flick on the press tour, as he and his wife hastily agreed to do it because it sounded like a big fun franchise to hop onto after all those long years of Marvel movies. But between his distracting accent, the gratingly unfunny jokes that take away from the epic tone, and the subpar effects on Downey's CGI animal co-stars that are at least easier to look at than anything from Cats or the Lion King remake, Dolittle is indeed a huge pile of wasted opportunity from some very talented people, with a hefty combined price tag of $233 million that only made back half of the $500 million worldwide that it needed to break even, though it still technically qualified as one of 2020's highest grossing movies. Thanks a lot, COVID! And now that Oppenheimer and The Sympathizer have proven that Downey's best days as an actor are still yet to come, he can put Dolittle behind him along with the rest of his career missteps as perhaps the worst of Dr. Dolittle's 3 on-screen adaptations to date. In fact, the only way that this movie could have been any worse is if it had brought back Eddie Murphy as the voice of a talking donkey.
You got the chance.
On the enjoyableness continuum scale from Bull to Bruce, Dolittle will make you want to neither grunt or squeak or even squawk with the animals, and raises its leg to piss onto a 4 out of 10. Dr. John Dolittle will thankfully not be returning in Avengers: Secret Wars. I'm Jesse Shade for JoBlo.com, and thanks again for watching our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe to the JoBlo Originals channel. Tell all your friends who like this sort of content, and turn on the bell to receive notifications for all our latest videos. We are an independent company that appreciates all of your support, and what a shame that this movie never paid tribute to the one actor who has best personified the role of Dr. John Dolittle.
What a wonderful world.
If I could walk with the animals, talk with the animals, grunt and squeak and squawk with the animals.
Good Lord, Dr. Dolittle is Chief Wiggum.
This bird's gonna fly.
It's a miracle! That must mean I am the chosen one. I'm gonna change the world.